Hi everyone, this is Allan McKay and welcome to a new episode. This is episode 10 and also the beginning of our month of transformation. So this is a quick episode. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Allan McKay podcast. Allan is an Emmy Award-winning visual effects artist and mentor to many leading industry experts. Listen in as Allan talks with other industry leaders in film, video games, and visual effects about their experience, lessons, and methodology. Allan will teach you pivotal advice to fast-track your career, better your skills, and reach your ultimate dream job. Check out the latest episodes on allanmckay.com.
Hey guys, this is Allan McKay and welcome to a new episode. This is episode 10. I'm currently in Vegas speaking at Autodesk University and I'm giving a keynote speech. There's a few hundred people here. It's going to be really awesome. And so this is just an excerpt of the first 15 or so minutes of the talk. But it's on something that I wanted to cover and I will cover a bit more in depth later on anyway. But setting goals and how to build a blueprint for success. So bear with me, but this is definitely a very core element to your transformation. This is something that it sounds a bit kooky, and I don't want to sound like Tony Robbins or someone like that when I say it, but by applying this, by really evaluating yourself, taking a look at yourself and what you need to do to move forward, and setting that goal, that at least your current goal that you want to work towards, that's the key step, and then going and breaking these down to manageable steps. There's a lot of core information I think is really worthwhile getting into, and I think the hardest thing for a lot of people is going to be to apply it. And the thing is that what I want you to do is to apply this right away, to start sitting down and figuring out what your goals are. I'll go into this more after the talk, just kind of going over this a bit more, as well as mentioning the winners of the Digital Tutors lesson, or contest I should say. So it's going to be lots to do. I've got a couple more talks I've got to give this week and a few more meetings, so I've got to dive back into it. But I will just say that this month is a massive month for transformation. 2015 is right around the corner, and I want all of us to make a massive, massive impact with our careers. So I'm dedicating my entire month. I'm taking the month off to dedicate to this podcast and putting out multiple episodes a week. 3 episodes a week, so every day or two I'm going to be putting out a new episode focusing on all the key steps to making big changes in your career, all the tools you need to do it. And this isn't just for people who are beginning out in the industry and want to break into it. This is a lot of key core concepts that will help you if you're 5 years in and you want to make that big step into visual effects supervising, or getting a promotion, getting more money. I'm going to go through negotiating money. I'm going to go through working from home, my spin on that, which is going to be really good, following on from the great information Todd gave last episode. I'm going to be going through a lot of really, really amazing stuff, and a lot of things that I guarantee, have not heard anywhere, because there's a lot of taboo content that people don't usually go through, including if there's time on bidding on projects. So if you want to actually get your own studio projects yourself rather than working as an employee for companies, you want to break into doing your own work and setting up your own business, as well as passive income. So if you want to make money on the side and generate money while you sleep, that's definitely going to be a really interesting episode. So there's going to be a lot. It's going to be an amazing month, but what I want is for all of us to do this together. I want to make this something that you're accountable for. So I want all of you, including myself, to write down your goals for this month and what your goals are for next year. So in other words, we're going to work on moving forward with 2015. What do you want to do? What are your ultimate goals that you want to achieve? Now, that's going to be a hard thing to share with other people and with yourself even, but it's something that if you can put that down physically on paper, in other words, by writing it down in a comment, that it's something that you're committing to and you can move forward with and start to move towards that. So the whole point of this month is going to be about committing to pushing ourselves and getting out of our comfort zone and trying to really succeed in achieving what we set out to do. So whatever it is, whether it's to move to a new country or to break into a new industry, to get over your job interview shyness or get public speaking gigs, build a name for yourself in this industry, get a better skill set, whatever they are, put down your goals and let's start to move forward. So that being said, let's dive into this episode. And like I said, it's a little bit different to what you're probably used to, but these are core things that we need to work on ourselves, and like working on this sort of starting point is where it all begins. So setting your goals and having a plan for it, how to achieve that, it's vital to taking the first step here. So let's dive in. Hi everyone. So thanks for coming along. I'm going to be talking about our careers, what we can do to make a massive impact, to get more out of them. I think it's the most overlooked part of what we do. We all learn to mash buttons and do tutorials and learn to do all that better. And working your skills is the essence of what you do, but it's still only half of the puzzle. You need to learn to handle yourself, to really build yourself up as a business. And that's the mindset that I want to get installed in your minds here, is that you need to think more as a business, you as an entity. So I think that's a very key thing with what we're going to cover. Now, just to give you a bit of a background, I work in film, obviously. I'm a visual effects supervisor. I'm a technical director. I've worked for a lot of the leading studios worldwide. Some of them include places like Industrial Light and Magic, Blur Studio, Ubisoft, places like that. I was awarded about a decade ago as a Autodesk Master. I've also received Emmys, Oscars, and various other awards, Pro Maxes, for projects that I've worked on. I've spoken at a lot of events like SIGGRAPH, places like that, as well as for a lot of private training companies. So Nomon, Digital Tutors, CG Society, Effects PhD. I have a lot of my own content, and that's something I'm going to be doing a lot more of now, is helping mentor people in the industry and really putting a lot more focus on that while I also work in production. Now, I've worked on a lot of films, Transformers, Superman, 2012 Blade, Flight. I've just finished up video game cinematics. I supervised Destiny and also worked on Halo and also the new Denzel Washington movie, The Equalizer. I've worked on a lot of different projects, and what is probably the most proudest moment for me is that about a month ago I launched my own podcast, and it's now got 25,000 listeners in a little over a month. It's by far the proudest thing that I've done to date, and for me it was a chance to give back to the industry that I've been so passionate about and I've gotten so much from, and for me to help others and to help contribute and share a lot of knowledge from myself and from other successful people was, a platform that I kind of really found myself doing and have really enjoyed doing. And for me, even the past couple of days being here in Vegas, walking through the hotel lobby and having people stop me quite a lot, actually, saying like, dude, that podcast is amazing, thank you, and everything. And even having dinners with a couple of the really higher up guys at Autodesk and having them say how they're addicted to listening to it and they've listened to every episode. That makes me all warm and fuzzy. But it's been a big motivator for me to have done this, and for me it's not something I'm doing for money. It's purely something I'm putting all my money and my time into because it's my way of giving back and helping others. And I think the key thing that's so overlooked with what we do is the fact that our careers are such a vital piece that most people just don't think about. And this is something I talked about at dinner the other night with a few of the Autodesk guys was that you do get a lot of people in this industry who you mention, you need to learn more of the business end of things, and they look at you like, I don't need to do that. I'm an artist. Like, I'll let the producers worry about that. Like, I don't need to know that crap. And I love when I said that because almost everyone at the table smiled and they got it. They really got it there. One of the guys actually said like, yeah, the producer would love to hear that. And it's not to say like a producer is going to screw you over or your supervisor's out to get you, but when you don't have the mentality of thinking about the business you're in and you're just worried about, I'm going to go in and do art, I'm going to trust that everything around me is going to work out fine, you're not protecting yourself, you're not defending yourself, you're not looking out for yourself. What you're doing is basically saying, please take advantage of me, I'm going to do my work, and I'm not going to worry about what's right for me. So like I said, it's not about someone going out and intentionally being out to get you, but you are in a business. Whether or not you like it, whether or not you realize it, whether or not you care, this is a business, this is an industry, and you're a part of it. And if you're not doing what you need to do and focusing on the big picture and what's going on around you, if you're just worrying about a small percentage of it, and doing the work is actually, about half of what you need to worry about, then you're only doing half your job, and there is going to be complications. People are going to take advantage of you. You're going to get screwed over one way or another because you're not thinking with a business mind. Now, most of you are here because the title says how to quadruple your job opportunities, how to position yourself as an expert. So I expect all of you to realize that, okay, well, I'm going to need to get my head in the game. And I think the number one piece of advice I can give you right away is that if I tell you what to do, you need to go do it. Okay, I don't want you to listen to it all and say, cool, I'll keep that in mind. Like, the whole point, the thing that separates the guys who make it, who are kicking butt, making the money, getting their name out there, never having to worry about work, are the go-getters. I had this conversation recently with someone about like social media and all that stuff, and this talk isn't about that, but I am going to give a lot of hacks as to ways to take advantage of all that stuff too. But this person was saying like, wow, like doing Twitter and social media and Facebook and all this stuff to get my name out there, it's a lot of work. And it's like, yeah, I would imagine it would be. Like, nothing is easy. If you want something, you're gonna have to put in the work. And again, the other night, one of the guys was saying to me about like, Allan, so just to ask you, do you have a life, or are you working 24 hours a day? Because you're doing all this stuff. So is it that you just have all this stuff going on and it's, or are you actually working all the time? And I'm like, yeah, well, I am. I mean, I have a life and I have fun, but yeah, I bust my ass. And I'd like to say that I'm lucky. I definitely will say I'm fortunate, but luck isn't really to do with it. Luck's an excuse. You work your butt off and you strategize and you think ahead and you carefully articulate what you're doing, more than likely you're going to do well. Now, if you just say like the word lucky, if you say, that person did well because he's lucky and I'm not lucky, so I'm not going to succeed, that's going to be one of your downfalls. And I will get onto this for a moment. Actually, I'm going to get onto just a bit of a tangent here because I want to go through a few of these core things. But I do meet people again who do bring that up, that like, I could do what you do, and I should be the one in your position right now. And I've had that a few times where people have told me that, and my response is always like, you could and you should, because you're a talented guy. Why don't you? And that's when they're like, oh, I would, but I don't have time right now. And that's just it. Like, you've got to make time. You've got to get off your ass. You need to make these opportunities, and I'll get into this stuff later, but it is about that. I want to cover a lot of stuff. You guys got to listen to me for an hour and a half, so I'm going to be hitting this stuff out rapid fire. So make sure you try and consume as much as you can. And, at the same time, like, there's a lot that I plan to cover, but the core stuff I want to get through first. Before I get into all the hacks and the fancy stuff, I do want to talk about some of the core things that are very vital. And these are the things that might sound a little hokey, but if you apply them, then all of this stuff will resonate and you will see results. Now, that being said, I'm just going to get on to just mentioning really quick that one of the big things that I did early on, I've written a lot of articles and I've had a lot of stuff published in books, but there's only been 3 articles I consider that I've written because I wrote them personally for myself. Okay, and the first one I ever wrote was called Overtime versus Productivity. Now, this article was essentially on how to avoid burning out. And this is something I know a lot about. Now, the one thing about this was that I wanted to write an article for the industry about what is kind of not working and more about how the whole model of burning artists out, making people work more hours for less money to get more result out of them, doesn't work. And the more that you overwork people, the more they're going to burn out, they're going to make mistakes, which evidently cost money because you're going to end up taking longer to get things done and backtrack what you're doing. There's a lot of stuff that goes into this, and it's just such a counterproductive idea to just make someone work 150-hour weeks on 2 hours a day sleep and expect them to yield better results. It's plain dumb, and I've done this to death myself. I've experienced it extensively. Now, I wrote this article as a way to essentially put this out to a lot of people, and it wasn't a rant. It wasn't something where I just wanted to say the industry sucks and here's what's going wrong with it. What I did is I put this out with a lot of practices we could implement to work better. Now, I expected this to have a little bit of wrath come back at me, but I was blown away by what actually happened, and that was that I actually got a massive response, a massive positive response. By now, I've received well over 1,000 emails about the subject, and back then when I wrote it, it was in New York, and it was amazing even that week to hear what was happening all over the world. I had companies like Pixamondo in China were changing a lot of their practices and how they did things. They were reevaluating a lot of their systems because of this article. I had companies like MPC and Framestore in New York, which were talking about it and really starting to look at how they did a lot of their stuff. I spoke with a lot of studio owners, supervisors, producers throughout that week. Had a lot of FaceTime with a lot of studio owners in New York, and I was expecting them to be the ones saying like, hey, you shouldn't be addressing this stuff, it's not cool, but everyone was so positive and agreed with me about it all, and it made me kind of respect them more, the fact that they could see this not as criticism, but more about, these are better work practices for everyone, like workplace practices. I come from being an artist as well as a studio owner. I am a soup, I'm a producer, I've directed commercials. I feel like I've kind of sat in enough seats where I can see it from every angle. Now, the people who didn't get it, and it wasn't everyone, it was just a very small portion of people, and I knew this would happen, was there was a couple of artists who would, email me or comment, and they'd be like, yeah, Allan, like, you tell them, like, studios suck, and that's not what I was trying to say. Now, what I ended up doing is I wrote a second article, and this article was about the artists, and this to me was a chance to kind of point out that it's not just the studios that make mistakes. What ends up happening is that we all can work more effectively. And what typically happens, and this is a bit of a generalization, but what typically happens is you get a lot of artists that come in the morning at 10 a.m. They get their coffee, they sit down, they read their email for an hour, and then they do some work, and then it's lunchtime, and you go out, you get lunch, you come back, play some video games, then you do some work, you have your mid-afternoon coffee with the guys, you come back and you do some work, and then it's 6 p.m. and you're complaining that the producer's making you work overtime, when really you worked about 4 hours that day. And this is a generalization, but it's a pretty accurate one in certain places for sure. Now, that isn't a practical way to work, and you need to look at, okay, well, what can I do to change my habits and to kind of figure out ways to get a bit more responsible and on top of my work. Now, this is what really is a big game changer, is that the artists who actually are able to take a step back and reevaluate how they work and what their sticking points are, and really look at themselves and their main habits and bad practices, and they're able to crush them, those are the ones that really step up. And when you talk about like, how can I get ahead, or I should be getting more money and all these other things, there's little tweaks you can do to yourself that suddenly make you like night and day stand out as being more productive, more efficient, more of a leader. And so when I wrote that second article on overtime versus productivity, focusing more on the artist, it was more about how to work more effectively, how to batch a lot of your stuff to get more efficient and work faster, how to do more, how to evaluate where your sticking points are, so that way you can focus on bettering your skills. If you actually look at the studio you work at and look at how everything's run, you can get your mind more, or mindset more, into how the producers work, how the supervisors work, how everyone around you works, and more be able to adjust yourself and what you're doing to more accommodate everyone else. If you really start to take responsibility for your work and start to step up and communicate with other people, and when you mess up, like, start to catch those things and try and implement practices to avoid those in future. I mean, just general stuff that you think we all do, but it's not until you really start to be self-aware and become more disciplined that you start to realize that there are ways to work better. And there's a lot of kooky stuff I put in there, but it was more life hacks, stuff that tricks to allow you to work more efficiently. And that, again, was really well received. It was definitely a cool one. It was definitely for people who got it, who wanted to kind of step up their game, but these were ways that you could do that. And for me, that was a big eye-opening moment. I always used to have producers on my ass, like, when's this going to be done? Where is this? Are you sure this is going to be on time? I'm really nervous about this. And I'd always want to avoid the producers around me because I felt like they were just these nagging, annoying people. And when I did make those realizations, like, I would wrap up my day at 5:30 in the afternoon instead of 6 o'clock, and I'd spend 30 minutes like writing emails to everyone, letting everyone know where everything is, planning my next day, writing an email to my producer, CCing everyone, just saying, like, this is what I did today, this is what I still need to do, this is the ETA on these things, these are on the farm, 20 minutes, 30 minutes to get all this stuff organized, and also get my next day organized. That way, when I came in, I already knew what I needed to get done. Simple things like that, it was night and day difference. Suddenly, I didn't have producers ever go near me other than to like shoot the shit and offer to buy me coffee and help me. And suddenly, people were promoting me. Suddenly, people were including me in a lot more high level stuff. They had a lot more confidence about me and my ability, because rather than you being this nervous thing, like, if you put yourself in the mentality or the mindset of a supervisor or someone who's not on the box, they're typically having to organize assets and anticipate fires to put out. And if you're able to shed some light on what you're doing and what's going on, then suddenly they're going to realize, like, wow, if everyone could do what Allan's doing, we'd be in a much better place right now, because suddenly you can have that foresight into any problems. And if you're able to say, look, we've got a problem, this is going on, it's not something to be worried and scared about, you're actually putting up an issue so we can all together as a team resolve it, rather than it being like I messed up and I hid my issue, I hid my problem till the last minute. So the more you communicate, the more you get out there, the more your job, everything's going to step up. But the third article I wrote, and this one's the important one, this was a really difficult one to write because it was very personal to me, and it was all about failure and also about not giving up. And I wrote this last year around this time when I was in Boston in my hotel. I was working on the equalizer, and I wrote this both for myself as well as for my girlfriend and a few other people, because for me, like, my girlfriend's a really amazing artist. She's super talented and very passionate about her work. I haven't met many people as talented as she is, but when I first came into her life, she had grown up with her dad basically telling her that she shouldn't waste her time. Art isn't a job, it's a waste of time and a waste of money, and she shouldn't put any time into that. She should focus on something more practical. So she was joining the Air Force and during the military like her parents, and doing something more practical in her dad's eyes. And this kind of broke my heart to see someone so passionate about what they do and so talented, and to see that it all going to waste. So when we were going out, I told her, don't worry about us, just focus on your art, like focus on your passions, your dreams, and I'll take care of us. Just you do that, and when you make it, but I don't want you to give up on something that you care about so much. And don't worry, like, I got this. It was just a chance for her to kind of have that passion and not be torn away from it. And I hated that. I hated to see someone have to give something up because someone told them that they won't make it and they'll never achieve anything. And so when I wrote this article, in a way I wrote that also for her, just to say, like, we all have those people doubting us, but you just keep trying, you keep at it, and you will succeed. And I also wrote it in a way to thank my mom, and this is the key point I'm working towards, is that I didn't have what my girlfriend had. I didn't have someone telling me no. The greatest gift that my mom ever gave me was by always saying, yes, you can achieve that, never doubting me. Just, I would say I want to do something, she would say, you can do that, like believing in me and never ever installing that mindset of failure. And I think because of that, I could achieve the unattainable. And the title of the article was Going After the Unattainable. And that, to me, it meant that I could have goals that most people would tell me, and they have, like, you'll never accomplish that, you'll never amount to anything. But by having someone always encouraging me when I was young and never installing those limitations early on, it meant that I could do anything. And for me, that was a big changing moment, was having a chance to actually accomplish all of that. So when I was at school, I hated school. I basically never went. Like grade 5, I would go about 6 months of the year. I just never was there. And by the time grade 9 came around, like the second week of grade 9, I quit school. I just stopped going. And it took about a year, and then I finally realized, like, I better do something about this. I don't want to be a high school dropout and not do anything for my life. And probably the single most important thing I ever did that impacted my entire career was I sat down and I had a piece of paper and I scribbled, "You are here," at the bottom, like this slide on the screen. And I then wrote at the top my goal. Okay? Now, this might sound a bit kooky and everything, but I wrote down "you were here," and at the top I wrote Hollywood. Now, keep this in mind, I was 14, I didn't know anything, I didn't have any internet. I had no one in my life to help me, or any books or learning material, no money. I was from a small town in Australia, and I'd never been on a plane. Um, I literally was helping my mum pay rent for our 200 square foot apartment. And this to me was the most unattainable goal when I look back at it now. But having that goal was a really substantial thing for me, having a physical goal that I could go for. Now, it wasn't like get $100,000 a year or whatever it was. It was, I want to work in Hollywood. I set a goal for myself. I want to be a technical director in Hollywood within the next 15 years. Okay? And that to me was a big changing moment, because by setting that goal at the top and setting my "you are here," which I'll explain in a moment, it meant that I had a direction. You have a vector. By having those 2 points, you now have a direction. And it means that you now have somewhere to go. And if you don't have that goal, then you're not going to ever get to it. You're not going to have any direction. And I say that because I think it is one of the hardest things to actually do, is to actually have a goal. To actually say, you know what, like, and again, that's why I say the money, like, yeah, I want a fast car, or I want this much money. That's not a tangible physical goal. Saying that I want to work on Pixar-like movies, doesn't need to be Pixar, but Pixar-like movies in the next 3 years or whatever, that is a goal and a timeline, and that's all you need to start with. Now, I mention this, and I don't want to sound like Tony Robbins or one of those guys saying it, but like, I do think that if you have that, then you can do it. It's that simple. You can break down that into tangible, sizable chunks and begin to go about it. And that's what I did. Now, I will just say that I set a 15-year goal to do this, and it was be a technical, get work in America within that amount of time. And I thought, yeah, I can do this. I'm going to do this. Even though it seemed so unrealistic as me as a 14-year-old kid to set out a goal that I'm going to work in Hollywood on big movies and all this stuff. 3 years later, when I was 17, I got my first job offer to work at one of the biggest studios in LA. And I had already achieved that goal. I didn't take it at the time because I wouldn't have been the legal drinking age to drink over there, and I would have gone nuts. But seriously, I held off, but I got offered a really big job by Blur Studio. Tim Miller, the owner, the president, reached out to me and said, I really like your work, and I want you to come work for our studio. And I wasn't actually legally old enough to work in the States at the time, but I had achieved the most unattainable goal that I could have set at the time within 3 years. From being a little kid, setting that goal, I had achieved that. And then shortly after that, Digital Domain reached out to me as well. Now, like I said, if you have that vector, that's all you need, a timeline and a vector. And I'm going to go into this more, but let me just talk about the theory right now, and that is that for me, in that situation, not knowing 3D, not knowing anything, all I did is I had my goal, and from there I sat down and I said, okay, well, what do I need? I wrote down 4 things that I needed to get closer to that goal. I needed a piece of paper, education, in other words. I look back now and I'm like, wouldn't have actually needed that, but that's one of the things I wrote down. Another thing I wrote down was I need to get experience. So I need to go work some places or whatever to get experience, to get stuff on the resume. I also need a portfolio, and I also need to actually get to know people in the industry as well. And I guess a fifth one would be actually need to know the stuff, because I wasn't very experienced in 3D. I'd messed around POV-Ray and 3ds DOS. That was about it. So, I'd set out 5 things I needed to do which would get me closer. Now, again, breaking those down, I would set timelines like, okay, well, I want to enroll to go study this stuff. There was like a multimedia university. It taught like Macromedia Director, a little tiny bit of 3D Studio 4 for DOS, by that stage, Photoshop, stuff like that. So I wanted to go enroll in that, so I needed money to do it. So I would get a part-time job. I would go and work at KFC, of all places, as a cook in the kitchen as a little kid, and I'd save up my money so I could go enroll in school. Meanwhile, I needed to go and learn this stuff, and 24 hours a day I would kill it. I would be at my desk, always sleeping when I'd hit the render button, but I would do that too. I would go out, I would network, I would find people in my industry I could reach out to. Anyone and everyone. By that stage I had, a dial-up internet modem. I could get online and, research some big cities in Australia that, out of the 3 studios or whatever that had it. Now, at least then I could actually build up some of these goals. And it was more about, okay, I had these 5 goals. How do I break them down more? How do I break each thing down into, this month I'm doing this, this, and this. This month I'm doing this, this, and that. And each month I'm slowly getting towards that goal. And by strategizing and by breaking them down to sizable chunks, I can measure my success. I can measure where I'm heading. So that's a really important factor, is by doing that, by breaking these down, it isn't an unrealistic goal anymore. They're literally broken down to pretty much footsteps. And again, I don't want to get all metaphorical and make this into that, but it is that. If you make it measurable, you can measure your success. And so every month assigning your goals and hitting your mark every time, motivating yourself, pushing yourself, you really need to get off your ass, and you really need to apply yourself, and you need to want it. By doing that, you're going to succeed. And it all is about having that passion and that drive. And if you don't have it, you're not going to do it. You're going to fizzle out. And I see a lot of people do that too, because they didn't really have that fire in the beginning. And I think that's what really, really makes us. So that's such a small part of this, but it's also a very crucial core element of all of this, is set your goal. And if you do that, if you sit down right now and you figure out, okay, well, my goal is that I work in architecture right now, and I want to work in feature film. I've got all this experience, but none of it's working towards my reel. What do I need to do to apply this to what I'm doing? Like, how do I sidestep and utilize the resources I have around me to get into my industry, into the industry I want to do? How do I set a goal that in the next 3 years, I am going to work on my first feature film? So that means in the next 2 years, I need to get at least in the commercials or in somewhere in the actual 3D industry. So what do I need to do within the next 2 years to do that? Do I need to go and learn some new software? Do I need to get a couple of pieces for my reel? Do I need to make some contacts and find out what's going on so we can start jumping on the right projects? Networking, all of these things. So there's so much I'm going to cover, but that's just the first part of this that I wanted to mention, because when I wrote that article, going back to that for a second, to me, like I said, it was a very powerful piece that I wrote more for myself and for a few key people. And I remember a couple of friends of mine who are really, really successful at what they do in this industry. One of them, in fact, told me, I read that article and I, was pretty much tearing up at the end of it, just because it was so inspiring and I could relate to it so much. And that's the one thing everyone I know has said, is just it's something they can relate to. I know some guys who are extremely successful. They've really made it in this industry, and a couple of them have, a few of them have said that they read that every couple of days when they get up in the morning, because it inspires them and it motivates them. So they're constantly rereading it over and over and over as a way to give them the inspiration to make the big changes they want to do and kick some butt in their life, in their career. And I hear that a lot from a lot of different people. I get a lot of email every week or two about that, and it's great because it means that something I was scared to share, which was me not giving up. I mean, we all face those moments of rejection, and I was rejected a lot. A lot of people think that I just made it, and I did 3 years, I did, but I was ready to give up so many times. I had so many people around me telling me I can't do it, I'm going to fail, I waste my time, I should give up. But I stuck with what my mom had kind of installed in my head, which was, no, like, I'm not going to give up. And the thing is that I wrote that blueprint. To me, I had that piece of paper, and that at that point, because I'd made it into a physical reality, I had a recipe in my hands as to how I could do it. Whatever people told me that you can't do it, you're not going to make it, it didn't really resonate with me, because I would think, no, like before, if I was just to say, I want to do this, and then people crushed my dreams, fine. But for me to have physically broken it down to a science of like, here is the roadmap. All I need to do is follow this and stick with the program, and I'm going to get there. It meant no matter what, I wasn't going to be deterred. I wasn't going to be pushed away. I would get to my goal. And by physically breaking that down into a way where it made sense, suddenly I could see what I needed to do, and I just needed to do it. It meant that I would make it. I would get to my goal. I would one day get to work in LA. And here I am now, like, doing exactly what I set out to do, and I'm so grateful for it. And since then, I've applied this formula over and over and over to everything that I do. And it's only been in the more recent years, like, I've got some friends, well, two of them that literally make tens of millions of dollars. They're very successful, not necessarily in my industry, but in other industries. And talking to them, like, they've told me some of the habits they have, and it's the first time I've actually seen that other people do exactly this as well. And that makes me think, like, yes, like, this is something that I was doing as a kid that changed my life, and I see that other people who are far more successful than I'll ever be, and they inspire me just being around them. But like, to see that they do the exact same thing with their lives and their successes makes me think, yeah, like, even when I was 14 or 13, I was onto something. And this has been the core thing that I do with everything I do, is no matter how unrealistic, how silly, or whatever it is, stick with the program and build that roadmap, and you'll get there every single time. Okay, so hopefully that opened your eyes a little bit as to what's possible. Now, I think this is one of the core things that you really need to do before you can go about doing anything else. And like I said, this is something that I apply to everything that I do these days. Before I approach it, I always set my goals. I always evaluate where I am, and I'm brutally honest about my skills, where I'm currently at, what my weaknesses are, what are my sticking points. I will look at myself from the eyes of my employer or whoever needs to evaluate me, even if it's going to be something I'm going to sell, to make sure that what I'm selling or what I'm doing, what I'm making, where I'm going to work, what I'm going to speak about is actually going to do what I intend it to do. Maybe it's something I think is going to be really great, or I'm really good at, and in the long run, through the eyes of other people, it's not exactly right. I need to work on that. I need to evaluate and really look at things harshly. Be brutally honest with yourself about that. Now, at the same time, to set your vector, to set your ultimate goal of where you want to be, and then be able to look at, okay, well, in hindsight, what do I need where I'm currently at to be able to get there? What do I need to work on? Break down the steps to get there. Have a timeline to do it, so that way you can achieve all these things. 3 months to work on improving your communication skills. Okay, I'm going to go out there and do a bunch of interviews. I mentioned this in a previous talk, previous episode, about going out and doing interviews just for the sake of getting practice. Whatever it's going to be, go apply at Starbucks for the sake of getting interview experience. Whatever it's going to be, it's a matter of working on bettering yourself. If you're not outside your comfort zone, you're not growing, you're not moving forward. So keep that in mind, keep stepping forward, keep moving, keep improving on yourself. Keep getting outside of your comfort zone. Set your goal and break it down into tangible steps. And then from there, you'll have the blueprint to exactly how to go about doing this. Like I said, it's not me, it's everyone that I can identify as being very successful follows this formula. Now, what I want is all of you to set your goals. And this is the first point of what we're doing throughout all of the Transformation December. We're going to set our goal of what we want to accomplish throughout next year. From here, we can then begin to apply all of these other experiences, all these other abilities to improve on ourselves, but we need to initially have this set. So figure out your goal, write it down in the comments. So go to allanmckay.com/10. So ALLANMCKAY/10 for episode 10. So go there right now and leave a comment with your goals, because you're going to be accountable for these, and I'm going to be checking in on you. I'm going to be working with you guys on this stuff. So this is the month to take seriously, to really say yes and commit to, because we're going to push forward. We're going to make big changes, and we're all going to make a massive impact in 2015. So that's it for this episode. I'm just going to point out the winners of the contest I ran last month. The first one, and these are the usernames on iTunes, but Diego Grimaldi, Jerry Stroh, Dr. S. Vincent, Aspect VFX, and Drice, that's DRICE, Drice77. So shoot me an email, and I'll follow up with you guys about this. Now, that's it for this episode. Leave a comment, and let's make a massive impact in 2015. I'll be back Friday with another episode on working on really stepping up our game. That's it, guys. Rock on.